Welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with their randomly assigned story elements and try to make a story that you can put into a time capsule, wait 100 years, and bring out, and it's still relevant. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. This is a continuation of our, I think, 3-part series, right? That's where we're at now. This is part 3.
Part 4, actually. Wait, yeah, part 4.
Wow. This is part 4 of our different attempt to do stories a different way. We got story elements, got them together, and instead of just making a bunch of one-off stories, we have been building on the same story every single week. And I think we're pretty sure that this is going to be the capstone, the final episode for this story, A Trip to the End. I'm going to now give you a short synopsis as to what the world looks like and what's happening. So what the world looks like, it's kind of a corporation. Corporations run everything. There's a pretty big kind of virtual reality world called Citadel that everyone kind of participates in. And there are games kind of off Citadel that you can play, whether it be Fantasy World or FPS Land or whatever it is. There's games to play always. The hero of our story, his name is Marius. He is a programmer and he has some experience with Verde Abyss. A system, a program that's plugged into the system for sharing information and for gathering information about people. Marius finds out that what these various corporations, 3 kind of big ones, are doing is they are basically harvesting people's neural nets to create underlying program code for their system, because people's neural nets work so much better and more efficiently than anything people could write. He sort of approaches some sort of resistance people about it. Actually, I think we determined in the last episode that he was already part of the resistance. He was working from the inside. Is that what we said?
Yeah.
Yeah, but he was still, subverted. I mean, he still was this. He had created this character, D'Artagnan, and
wait, we're not there yet. I'm saying that even before his untimely demise.
Yeah,
he was working and he was had a big breakthrough, and then he was in a quote unquote accident as shady individuals basically got him into an accident and then rushed him to a place and put him into the Verde Abyss so that they could try and harvest all of the information that he knew. And the way they did that was they inserted him into the world, and he became sort of a really powerful NPC kind of character who was the best at everything because he had a programming brain and he was in the world. Let me see. He took the name D'Artagnan, and I think where we are right now is there's the in the game world, and then there's the outside of the game world where Marius's wife Maria has partnered with Crockett, a sort of an old crotchety engineer, to create a download spike. Is that what it's called, Reed?
the upload spike.
Upload spike
is to reverse the download that the Verde Abyss had affected.
And they're trying to find where his body is and where his brain is, where his consciousness is stored. There's the prophecy that we think maybe Marius wrote or maybe someone else wrote. Seth, do you remember what the prophecy was, since it was your thing, or do you?
Let's see if I can get it all straight here. So the 3 hills that look over the Green Sea are flattened, and the red dragon arises. Excuse me. Then those that lie under the Green Sea, if they turn and rise with the blue sun, they will gain the gift to defeat the red dragon and set things right. Something like that.
Right. And we determined that part of the blue sun thing was that if you turn it sideways, it looks like a mouse. And that since the memory systems for everyone's in-game characters are built on top of a elephant's AI, like an elephant's neural net, that if anyone sees a mouse in the game, then they all get the fear condition and can't move and are paralyzed, basically. So something has to do with that. Did I cover it, basically? At the place we are in the story right now, Maria has kind of come into the world to try and find Marius, who goes by D'Artagnan now, and she has kind of won him over. It's like a love story all over again, right? And she's trying to convince him that there's something more and something bigger, where kind of a coping mechanism, he can't really believe that there's anything else. And all that they're trying to do is get it so the upload spike, they can find out where he is so that they can go there and do the upload spike thing. But I think with this last story, we're going to kind of see the culmination. There's Daniel, the kind of mobster, kind of guy who gets favors, crooked kind of mob guy. He's Daniel on the outside, and he kind of knows he's looking for Maria, for Maria and for Crockett. And he's Mark on the inside, and he's looking for D'Artagnan because he's trying to get him to divulge the information. Did I basically cover everything?
Yeah, you're pretty good. Yeah.
Okay. So where we are right now is something is rolling out, and the end of times is coming in the game, basically. I'd say maybe one of the hills, the 3 hills, has been flattened. Maybe it represents like a company that's been like destroyed or been like at least kind of immobilized or what's the word? Frozen, like their assets have all been frozen. So their ability to kind of exert control has been reduced. And so the hill in the game has flattened out, and it's like, oh no, something's happening,
Okay, so I think maybe at that, I've got an idea on how that is. So
okay, let's hear it.
If they've admitted Maria into the game, it's kind of going on a double scale. They've brought this to court somehow, and they're basically using her as a live witness. And so however the access that they're giving, whatever she's revealing, as let's say in the courts, frozen one of the, let's say, these companies' assets.
Yeah.
But again, they're like a triune thing. And so it's basically like, oh, wait a minute, there could be some nefarious things going on with these people. Oh, wait, they're because of their involvement in what's going on. Because I mean, it would be a huge corporate rights in this kind of world. It would be the corporate rights violation.
Yeah.
That if these companies are like basically stealing the neuro property of a different corporation, because that's what runs everything. They're basically, it's a huge theft is what it is. And that however it is, maybe they're exposing this, and maybe that's what's got that frozen.
Yeah, maybe she gets the corporations to start going against each other by proving that that one corporation thought that they were all going to share, and the other corporation has been kind of dealing double, and so she's kind of got them to go against each other, and because like one person wouldn't really have a say in the corporate sphere, but because she's able to like let one know that the other one is kind of doing a double cross on the other one, they started going against each other, and their power started to diminish. What were your guys' story elements?
I have unique vehicle.
I have goal.
I have magic system. So Seth, should you go first and give us the goal for the end of this story, like a goal for the whole story and how we can wrap it up?
Sure. So I would say the goal for the whole story is to bring about the ultimate demise, obviously, of these 3 hills, these 3 corporations, which in turn, whatever the red dragon is like a protection mechanism, whether it's only in game or whether it's out of game in some sort. I have an idea for that, which I can insert later. And then somehow using their upload link and the weapon in order to defeat that dragon. And then ultimately in the end, figure out whether they're going to create a separate entity that is the game, because there's so many people that are so interconnected. And basically, if they've gotten all these people that are enslaved to it, they basically belong to the game. Well, then who owns the game? Is the game going to become under a different corporation, or is it going to be its own ethereal kind of thing under its own rule, and who's going to rule over it? So I think that would be in game. And then out of game, you have, obviously you take down these 3 hills, overturn the abyss, and, settle out what happens there. Yeah. In, whatever. I'm thinking it probably in the kind of world it's some other larger corporation ends up taking larger control of whatever interest that these 3 things had out in the real world. That's how it is. Yeah. And so it probably looks like they, let's say like, the higher power kind of takes over, and I guess in a sense sets things right with, ethical behavior with it, releases or gives a corporate loophole for people to choose to whether to be under this new entity and stay in game, or, return out with, let's say access, but not being controlled by. Yeah. So I think that would be the ultimate goal. Do you want to hear the magic system? Yes.
Are you guys familiar with the fact of quantum belief? Like the idea that if enough people believe in something, that there's a chance that we can create our own reality by enough people believing in it?
I've heard of it. Yeah.
Cool.
That is what we experience here. Enough people have been inserted and have voluntarily inserted themselves into the game on a permanent or mostly permanent basis that things start to get weird and funky. Because the city that is Citadel matches the city that is the sort of main hub of the story, like block for block and house for house, people start seeing strange things on the outside of the game. At first, they think it's kind of really complex holograms being created by the hundreds of thousands of digital projectors and cameras, like a horse will ride by or a dragon will be flying in the sky, right? But as the world progresses on and on, a strange shift starts to take place where the world, especially mostly just in this city of the game, starts to move into the world of reality because the people's bodies exist in reality, but their minds exist in the game. What they start to believe is happening in the game starts to happen in the real world. People begin to be able to, a guy will be playing Fantasy World for 20 hours and he'll get out and he'll just out of habit, flick his hand open, which is what opens up the menu. And since he understands that flicking his hand open opens up the menu and tells him his resource list, it creates that for his living body in the real world. And at first it's projectors sort of filling in the space, but very quickly it's some third reality, some not really understood truth that begins to pull the two worlds together in a way that now he can flick his hand open and he can see his vital signs in a menu-like system, or he can activate a fireball spell. And at first, it was just light, and then it had some more texture, and then it had a little bit of heat, and then it was a full-on fireball. As more and more people were in the game and more people were convinced, not really like their front of the brain convinced, but like the hind brain were convinced because of the realistic graphics, because of the detail of the world. They were convinced, and that convincing, the sort of collective convincing, brought about a sort of pseudo-reality. Now, it only works inside of the city where the Citadel matches it one for one, where they look at it and their brain says, I'm in the game because this building looks the same. So if you get out of the city, then things start to break down. But the problem with that is that the game developers have been basically building out, rendering out the town, rendering out the world 100 miles at a time or 1,000 miles at a time in every direction. And every month they come out with a couple thousand more miles. And as they do that, to sort of push, they need more human neural nets in order to support that. So more people are harvested and brought into the Verde Abyss, and it gets stronger and stronger and stronger. So now in the heart of the city where it was first created, it's like full-on fantasy world. If you were level 20 in whatever max, I just said level 20 because that's D&D. If you were like max level in fantasy world and you're in this main city, you can summon a dragon to fly you out. And as you fly out, he becomes less rendered and less real as he leaves the city, until he just disappears completely. But that is the magic system.
Cool.
Yeah.
It kind of fits with the unique vehicle a little bit because, Crockett's properties have been kind of on the edge of the city,
right?
And he, his plan, to create an interface where Maria could go into the game but stay, semi-protected in his somewhat off-grid property.
Right.
He begins to see the effects, and he's starting to worry. So he gets to work, and he created himself back in his compound, which is he's got all kinds of protections up to keep his compound free of the system. And he created a hack so that he could literally enter the game without interfacing in the same way that the other players do. He could jump in and out.
Right.
And his plan is to get to Maria in the game and find her and Marius through her, so that he knows can figure out where to insert the upload spike and bring awake those who sleep beneath the green sea.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and so he has successfully now created this hack that that for at least for short term, it's been untraceable. So he can enter because he was feeling like his charge to protect Maria from being found out and found in the real world. He had to work fast. So he set up this thing, and he's essentially opening up his compound to compromise. But for the short term, at least, his hack has got firewalls and safeguards so that he can get in and jump in and jump out without being tracked.
Right.
So that's the unique vehicle. Is an off-grid hacked interface that Crockett can use to communicate with Maria and hopefully Marius once he comes out of the fog and realizes the connection.
Right. I have kind of the idea that maybe Crockett hasn't allowed for like the state-sponsored cameras to be put up in and around his compound.
Right.
So the sort of melding of the two worlds, the magic system, does not work inside of his compound.
Right.
Because he's very careful about making sure that radio signals can't come in and that drones, satellite is obfuscated. So while it would work for the outside walls of Crockett's, once you get in, it takes time for the machine to sort of recognize things and to like process it and put it into the game and for that whole thing to happen. And so for right now, that's kind of a safe space against like the weird kind of chaos that's kind of overflowing now between the two places. I was thinking, Seth, that maybe the Red Dragon is like a safety measure, like something that enters in, something that was built into the game, but then enters into our world once it's been like enough, it's been saturated enough and like the power is enough. The game, the programs kind of recognize the fact that there's like a new place and that it's not like up to code, not up to code, but it's like there's something wrong with it. There's two places, and it kind of views the new world that the program can now kind of see and understand as kind of a corrupted system of itself, right? Because in the normal Citadel, if the streets are always clean, right? Because when you drop garbage on the ground, it disappears, right? But in the real world, you drop garbage on the ground and that garbage is on the ground until somebody cleans it, In Citadel, you don't have to clean buildings. You don't have to scrub graffiti off of walls. Or if you do, they snap their fingers and it's off. So maybe it views the real world as kind of a corrupted system and therefore turns against it and starts to rise up and destroy it, basically.
Yeah, I like that. I'm thinking that the demise, like there were the big three, and then there were two. Like the one corporation has been neutralized and like basically the victim of a hostile takeover.
Right.
And the other two have, but then there's this consolidation of power going on. I had in my mind that the dragon was the eventual, complete consolidation of power. The three corporations would crumble away and leave just the one mega entity. First, like in the game, but then like in the real world too. That's my picture of the Red Dragon. I have this old book from like maybe 1954 or something called Red Dragon Over China. And that's what I've been thinking about in this. Maybe I had the story element of a book I've been reading, but about the notion of the Red Dragon rising out of the corrupt corporations, and then just the technology and enhanced brute force of naked exercising of power and gaining control of the net,
right.
the green, the Verdi abyss, and so that's the Red Dragon rising is the way I viewed it. I don't know, what did you think, Seth?
So here's kind of what I'm thinking. So in the was it Daniel and Mark? So the villain, as we have set up, he is the Red Dragon. In game, he's got himself set up as the blue sun because of the prophecy, and he's got the blue sun on all his stuff. But really, what he's doing, the three corporations, he's either one of them or part of them, and he's their failsafe.
Okay,
he's kind of like their strong arm. He's deeply involved in all the inner workings in the real world. Keeping everybody under his thumb. In the real world, but then also in the Citadel world, he is again, this other character that keeps everybody just below, ever doing anything about anything. And he's always, always just kind of there. Like, again, he plays both sides, but what's going on is the demise of these three corporations is they leak the information to these other corporations that are in league that Daniel/Mark is like basically illegally tapping their neural network for his own purposes to set himself up as, the
Blue Sun or the Red Dragon.
Blue Sun or the Red Dragon. But he is the Red Dragon.
Right.
I think in game, his character Mark actually maybe manifests as like a red dragon. And so, because it's fantasy world. And so I think they have to kind of fight him there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
However, because he has like a Neuralink that he can kind of step in and out, he's also on the outside. And I think, how would that go if he's, kind of playing this strong arm? They either take him out on the outside in conjunction with taking him out on the inside, or...
Who are they? The good guys or the other corporations?
I'd say maybe a little bit of both. Maybe because the other corporations are after him.
I would say something like the corporations try to take him out on the outside, but then he does like the reverse of an upload spike, a download spike, and because of the way that the world is kind of melding together, is he basically he's in like a... He's running away from them. He goes into like a shipping container. He like lays back into a thing and he grabs a scientist by the shirt and says, "This better work." And he kind of lays back and, a couple of black cars kind of pull up and a guy pulls out an RPG and just blows up the shipping container and like the fire and everything. But then out of the fire steps, he was able to upload himself into the game while that was happening. And the force of his presence there all of a sudden is the Red Dragon.
Ooh, that's good.
Of himself 100% in the game.
Right. Yeah. He puts himself, he does the thing.
He's been building himself his own neural network because he's been basically stealing people himself and building his own.
Yeah. His own set of his own network. Yeah. And so then that completes and he's able to then come out as fully the Red Dragon. So I like that better than mine. Mine I thought was pretty cool, but that just makes AI the enemy at the end of the day, which is a fine enemy, but man is such a much more evil thing. So I think part of this is as the story kind of progresses that all of D'Artagnan's kind of group of mighty men, right? Mm-hmm. Some of which are people who are playing the game, some of which people who were like terminally ill, who paid money to like have themselves scanned in, and some of which people who were unwillingly scanned in, who were part of Verde Abyss in an unwilling capacity, all kind of are able to step into the modern world, as like the manifestation of the worlds are kind of coming together. They're able to like step into the world, and therefore D'Artagnan, has like his heavy crossbow that like does like the fireball spell when it hits something, with like Crockett there with like a machine gun, and he's like firing these, like this real mix of like different, a horse charge against like a bunch of mobster guys with machine guns, like that kind of like a mix and matchup of different systems.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that Mark has come to realize that D'Artagnan might not be fully subsumed, by the system, and he sees that Maria is the key here, and so Mark sends has Daniel send some of his stooges to try to find. He knows that she's basically gone to ground in one of Crockett's properties,
right? And
but Crockett gets wind of this because he's been able to kind of cruise in and out, and he does a mock-up of a corporate maintenance truck that's just like out like doing its thing, but it won't raise any flags on any of the surveillance or any of the grid. And he manages to get the kid and Maria out of slip them out of their apartment before Daniel Stooges can get there. And he manages to get the truck and they do a switch in a blank spot in the cameras and get into another vehicle and then get him into the compound so that he can get her in a more secure interface with the game.
Right. Maybe he has been using his hack a little bit
Yeah.
But he, video games aren't for him. He's just too old.
Yeah.
So he sets up Maria with it, right? Except for the fact that Maria has played the game, right? Therefore, she has some levels in Fantasy World and an FPS land.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, she's coming into this ability to be able to like summon a grenade launcher whenever she needs it, or like call in an airstrike, which like all of a sudden planes just kind of streak into the sky and do an airstrike. Total and complete mayhem is what I'm thinking for the end of this story.
Yeah. And she just starts blowing crap up so Crockett can get in and slam home his upload spike.
Right.
And wake up the people under the,
and D'Artagnan is there.
Yeah.
Kind of, he's there because the game and the normal world are melding together, but he's trying to find, he's like fully convinced now, and he's trying to find this beautiful lady's her lover, her husband, and he's gonna help her find it if it's the last thing he does, because it's like a holy quest, having like zero cognitive understanding that it is in fact him that he's helping find.
Yes.
And I think that there should be a moment where, because not everyone who is uploaded to the game has a body. Right? Marius does. A couple of the newer people do. But a lot of people, it's been years, right? So their bodies are gone. You can't just turn off the machine and like cause a bunch of people to finally die, especially if they feel alive and conscious, and that kind of, I think, brings in kind of some of the goals of Seth's thing is like, what do we do with this thing now? The corporations have pretty much, messed everything up, and everything is a failure on their end, which is pretty much a success for the common man. But what do we do now? Here is a warehouse the size of the Gigafactory, filled with computers and systems to maintain people's consciousnesses inside the game. Do we just let them go? Do we just turn them off? And that's kind of the question they have to ask themselves. And that's kind of the thing that they have to go. For someone like Marius, it's okay because they have the upload spike. They plug it into the computer. He activates it. It pulls D'Artagnan's mind, and he's sitting there and he's like feeling like he's dying, right? Because his brain is being like re-uploaded into his body. And he's sitting there and he's looking at Maria and he's like, I'm so sorry. I hope that we were able to save him. And she's like, I'll see you in a few minutes. And he's like, oh, my love. And then he dies, quote unquote. And then Marius's eyes open, and we kind of have like a Wizard of Oz sort of situation where he's like, I just had the most crazy dream, but like, what do you think that they should do with the rest of the people, Seth?
So again, if we have a kind of a melding of the two worlds, I think is the separation of the two something we want to go with, or do we want to leave them?
Well, I guess I kind of like the idea then then that's just kind of how it is now.
Yeah, it's like an integrated reality.
Yeah,
whereas
between the two.
You can, I would say you could basically then, like, it's given all these people now a second chance to, let's say, live, but they can only live inside of this fantasy realm, which then has a slight interaction with the real world inside of this, city. And so they can, let's say, hop into other parts of the game, but then integrate into, I guess you could say, reality a little bit.
Yeah, it's just another journey in like what it means to be human and what it means to be sentient and what it means to be conscious, And
I think maybe what happens, so basically these three corporations, they're done for now. And now you have all these, let's say, people who are here. They are literal, let's say, live consciousness. They're not an AI.
Yeah.
It is the manifestation of someone's consciousness being photo generated into the world, like into reality, because it's like you said, the not phantom, but the quantum. So they literally are like physical. They've reanimated physically in this reality through the AI side, but because it's like heightened, to that point where it literally does remanifest inside of this area, they literally have, a new body, a new life, I mean, it's their same life, but it's, back in reality.
Right.
You have this rise of, now they're not they're not owned by anybody. This new concept that there's these free individuals, all these people that were trapped in this game are now, they're not, beholden to bigboxcorp.com.
Right. Which is like what everyone else is.
Yeah. And so I think it kind of ends with this, like, look to the future where now there's this, maybe there's like this jump, like another 10 or 20 years into the future, where then like Maria and Marius's kid is grown up and is bringing grandkids over, and then they're kind of discussing like, oh, what's going to happen now? There are, all these people now that have begun this new life. It's this brand new thing that we haven't seen for 500 years, where people are not they're free. They're individual and they're free to do as they please.
Yeah.
Unbeholden to
the Godfather,
the Godfather, the corporation, the corporation. Any of them, they're their own thing. Maybe they've kind of made their own, like say this new constitutional Republic of Citadel or something.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how America was formed.
Yes.
The unknown history of America.
And if you visit Washington and you go to the Jefferson Memorial, if at the base of the marble base of this statue, if you tweak it just 3 degrees, cattywampus kind of to the northwest, a secret door will open, and there will be scrolls in there that will lay this all out and make it so you can understand how it came to be.
And you can't prove me wrong because you don't know what kittywampus means, and therefore there's no way you can twist it kittywampus.
I'm sorry, I'm old.
No, that's fine. This could all be correct. This is good. I think this is a good ending. I have this kind of idea. No, that's fine. We can use that for another one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. This has been A Journey to the End, a four-part read, is that correct?
Yep.
A 4-part series with a well-fleshed out story, with a well-fleshed out story. Julie, I'm calling you out. Here it is, the story you've wanted. Julie's a listener and very good friend. Anyways, if you would like to hear more stories like this, we have a lot of short-form stories, and who knows, we might go back to that next week, or we might start another sort of long form one. We'll have to talk about and see what we think. But if you would like to hear more stories of the same caliber, you can listen to our back catalog. You could also just wait, because it gets better.